Here's your mic.
Okay, thank you.
Matthew, have you ever seen the Star Chamber? You ever-
Tim was just
Oh, they got that in?
Okay, let's go. Are you doing this?
Yes.
Okay, put that. I already got it.
Okay.
I wanted to show you this. He said it's Merry Christmas. That's something good.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
What'd he say?
an Escobedo card. I'll share that with y'all.
So I get pulled over, show him that, and
And don't say a word.
oh, you just hand him that?
Yep.
You want to use a demonstration?
We might.
Yeah, give it to him for Christmas present. I didn't know what it was. He said, go ask Tim. So you don't say nothing, huh?
Oh,
He gave them to you, so if you would let me know, so I can mark you off.
yeah. Please do. I know Carrie gave me some silver dollars, and there's there was 2 or 3 people, and I forget. Y'all have to overlook me. I don't have anything else to think about, so.
If you get Tim your silver dollar, come see Mark. Okay?
And tell the truth now. Because there's only one missing silver dollar, and so if 3 of y'all raise your hand, I'm gonna look at you very suspect.
I think
Okay.
I gave you about 10 of them, didn't
Yeah, 10 is.
I do not recall.
I? Holly North.
Okay. You let me know when we're ready, Boyd. Let's go. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed your lunch. We always enjoy going to Colby's, a nice little local restaurant, and we always eat too much too, which is our custom in Alabama, as you can tell. But we appreciate everybody being here this afternoon, and hope you're ready to learn some stuff, because we're going to be going through some stuff, and we're going to get you ready and get you certified where you can actually go out and help people do this stuff, and that's going to be a lot of fun for you. Talk about jurisdiction a little bit. Tim touched a little bit on it this morning. A couple of things you need to know about jurisdiction. Because you're going to need this stuff. We don't want to just throw this process to you and not prepare you for what the deal with the issues that you're going to arise, that will arise, guaranteed. In some of the cases, we're going to run into interference. Folks are not just going to lay down and let you do this. So expect that. But prepare for it. If you're prepared for it, you can deal with it. In jurisdiction, we have two forms of law that we deal with. One is called lawful and one is called legal. Now, what's the difference between lawful and legal? Well, I don't know what you've answered.
That is established in law. Legal is that which is generally accepted but not necessarily law.
It can be by custom, right? I call legal law. Legal law a lot of times is law by custom. Let me think of a custom. Ever heard of the income tax? Now, what does it say on your in Title 26 and on your IRS forms? Has anybody ever read those where it says it's voluntary? I went to the office down there one day to ask for a certain form in Dothan over here, and they got this IRS guy who works in that office in there, and I went in asking for a form, and he immediately said, "You're one of those tax protesters, aren't you?" I said, "Why would you say that?" He said, "You're asking for that form. We don't keep that one out there. We keep it behind the desk." I said, "I don't blame you." I was trying to cover up the law. I wouldn't put it out in public either. I said, "Well, let me ask you a question." I said, "Is the income tax voluntary or not?" He said, "It's voluntary, but we'll put you in jail if you don't volunteer to pay it." So that sounds really like it's voluntary.
There's a video circulating on the internet of Harry Reid arguing his interview for about 30 minutes as to the fact that it's a voluntary system.
It is, absolutely. There's no
But if
question.
you hadn't read that book,
Vultures and Eagles Clothing.
Eagles Clothing, I'm reading that book now. You need to read that.
Is that Ann Meredith's book?
Mandatory.
It's by Lynn Meredith.
Lynn Meredith, yeah. Yeah, that's actually some good information.
All that.
But when we're dealing, back before the Civil War, we had what is called a lawful government. All law was legislated law. All law had to go through Congress and be voted on by Congress and be carried by a majority of Congress. That was called positive law. That means your representatives actually went to Congress and voted on it, debated on it, voted on it, passed it into law. That was called positive law. That is law. Today we have a system that was created in the 1860s and 70s that is called a legal system. And the legal system works just like this. Now, Harold, hold that bottle right there. Now, this is how the legal system works, and you need to get this in your mind because this is exactly how I deal with them, okay? Because I understand this. Now whose bottle of silver is that right now? It belongs to Harold. It belongs to Harold, right? Okay, no argument with that, okay? But what if I walk up to him and I say, I'm going to just take that bottle of silver, and he doesn't say anything?
Then it's yours.
He acquiesced.
That's right, he acquiesced, and now it's my bottle of silver, right? But what if I go to take it and he knocks me down and says, "I want to keep it"? He gets to keep it, right? It's the same.
Aren't you going to demonstrate that part?
No, thank you. No, thank you. I'll let your imagination demonstrate that.
Harold doesn't have enough weight.
The bottom line is you've got to understand that the legal system is not violating the law. They really don't. They don't abide by the law. They're not required to because you consented. Now, if Harold protested me taking that bottle of silver and then I just by force took it anyway, what would you call that? Theft.
Right.
Does that sound like something that might be going on in America today?
Yes.
Foreclosures? You're saying no, and the bank, you're telling the banks, bring forth your claim and we'll take care of the bill. And the banks are saying, we don't have to bring forth the claim. And the judge is agreeing with them. And the sheriff is working for them. And they're all conspiring together to operate in a legal system. The problem that they got with it is that we are saying no. That's when it becomes not only a civil action, but it becomes criminal. This is where we have them around the neck. And now we got to start tightening our grip. These guys they can't win this fight because they have no law to support what they're doing. Now, Brother Ron, you've experienced that. It's exactly what I'm talking about in court. And in court, you got to squeeze. You can't just let them do what they want. Now, it doesn't mean you got to get physical. It doesn't mean you got to get violent or do anything wrong. All you've got to do is take away the consent, because the legal system works simply and completely on your consent. And when you take your consent away, they are committing a crime if they continue. Every single time. Because the Declaration of Independence, one of our founding documents, what does it say about consent? They govern at the consent of the people. Now, in positive law, when the legislature goes to work and they go pass a law, we are bound to abide by those laws. But the corporation, the corporate government, doesn't pass law as a rule. What do they pass? Statutes, regulations. Your counties and cities pass ordinances, codes. What happened to the word law? They don't operate under law. They just don't operate under it. They operate under what is known as color of law, under the legal system, not the lawful system of positive law that's legislated. That's the reason they have regulatory agencies who pass policies and regulations. They never call it law because it's not law. It's not positive law. If it was positive law, we'd have to abide by it. But they don't pass positive law. They do color of law. And color of law requires your consent to be legal. Without it, it is absolutely unlawful and illegal. So when you're dealing with law, that's one thing, but when you're dealing with color of law, that's a totally different thing. Now, when you're dealing with color of law, there's a lot of interesting things about color of law, but there's one little principle in law that I always enjoy using, and that's a Tim Turner maxim of law, is that the big fish always eat the little fish. I told some of y'all about that at lunch. They always do. And right now is a beautiful time in America. There's a presidential election going on. There's other elections going on all over the place right now. And who did I name on my lawsuit? The big fish. Well, there's another little maxim in law. I didn't make this one up, but this has been around a lot longer than we have, even as a nation. It's called respondi superior. Respondi superior means let the master answer. It's an old admiralty term that's older than this country, but it applies to our laws. That means the head guy is responsible for what everybody under him does. So that means that President Obama is responsible for Andy Hughes over here in Dothan, Alabama, and Wally Olson over here in Dale County, Alabama, and all of these sheriffs in this area that are acting up. That means he's responsible because he's the master of the ship. He's the head of the corporation, and they all work underneath him as sub-corporations. So he's as responsible for their actions as if he had done it himself in law. What do you think is going to happen with the $650 million federal lawsuit against the President of the United States for actions that some local sheriffs are doing? You catch it on? Yeah, hey, no, they won't ignore it. Oh, no. No, they won't ignore it. Not at all. You're going to be looking for some new sheriffs pretty soon. That's going to be his, and I'm going to let him do it. I'm going to let him do it. I said, you know, President Obama, I appreciate you taking action. You know, you get rid of those sheriffs and I'll take care of dismissing this lawsuit. And they'll be gone within 24 hours.
And guess who can fill their place?
Isn't that wonderful?
Would it be a matter of him making some type of political move within
he will make a big political thing out of it, absolutely.
He just can't come in and remove them, right?
Well, yes, he can.
Okay.
He can pick up the phone and call the governor and say, I want them removed, and they'll be gone.
As elected.
That's how it works. Yes, absolutely. Anytime they violate the law, they can be removed by the governor of a state.
Okay.
And the de facto, they know how to get to the governor.
I think they do. So we're playing the game. Political game is what we're doing, guys. Okay, but we're going to get the result we want. Now, it's not my intent to get any sheriffs harmed or dismissed. It's my intent to get people to comply with the law, but sometimes it's like training a mean dog. You ever had a mean dog? Sometimes you have to hit him in the head till he gets it. Now, I've had to do that in the past. I got one the other day, got after my cat, and I had to have a talk with it. But it's my neighbor's dog. And so I was nice. I talked kind of nice to it, but I got my point across. It didn't hurt the dog, but I did. I grabbed him by the ears. I said, "Listen." And that's what we're doing to the sheriffs. We're just grabbing them by the ears and hold them and say, "Listen to what I got to say. You got to listen, or you're going to end up in jeopardy." And I told the dog, I said, "You catch my cat, and you're going to be in trouble. Don't mess with the cat." And so I hope he got it anyway. He will next time.
A question?
Yes.
You have a question?
How long do they have to respond?
Well, I don't know. We've got it in court. We'll hear about a hearing, and then we'll go from there. I don't know. We'll see. We're just playing the game. Actually, my goal and my intent with the lawsuit was to stop foolishness that's going on in South Alabama, in this local area against our people, and bring national attention to the problem. And if President Obama is as smart as I think he is, he will take this and run with it. He'll make a national media thing out of it. And I'm going to let him.
Doing the right thing.
I'm going to help him. Okay? And this is the purpose of the lawsuit. It's not to sue $650 million. Don't care about that. It's to stop the behavior. In any county, and we're going to make this offer. I've already talked to the Supreme Court about doing a letter to the sheriffs in all of the counties and say any county that wants to agree with us that you'll just uphold the rights of the people and not harm people that are peaceful people. We're not asking you not to abide by the law or enforce the law, but if anybody, any one of our people does anything that's in violation of the law, the positive law of the land, we agree to support you arresting them and holding them until we come get them. Well, then we'll send the rangers down there and bring them into a court of law and try them. And if you're guilty, you're going to get punished. I mean, we're not for lawlessness. We're not lawbreakers. The bottom line is that they are working under a legal system that does not apply to the sovereign people of this nation, period, except by their consent. Now, the folks in this group, most of you know not to consent. You know not to. And once we don't consent, they enter into a criminal area that they don't want to go in. And that's what these sheriffs have done. They've entered into a criminal thing, and we could bring it into the criminal if they do anything against our rights. It will end up in a criminal action against the sheriffs. And that's not what we want. What we want to do is we're trying to do like I did to that dog. I just grabbed him by the ears and I said, "Listen, we want you to comply with the law. And the law at my house is you don't chase my cat. And if you violate that law, you're going to get punished, and you're not going to like it." So, yes, sir.
What are the chances, I don't know if I'm a can of worms, what are the chances of individuals that have had issues with local officials like judges and stuff being able to amend that lawsuit and specifically name them in the lawsuit?
We already have developed a suit that you can do yourself. So you need to come at them from different areas of the country. You don't need to isolate one area. We need to come at them. It costs $350 to file a federal lawsuit. Your mailings are going to cost a little more than that, but
would it be a separate lawsuit or be a piggyback?
It'd be a separate lawsuit.
Would it be a piggyback on this one?
No, it'd be a separate lawsuit.
Is there a contact on the website or anything we can get that information?
I'll give you the information. I have the lawsuit already drafted, and actually had the judge help me. A judge helped me write that lawsuit. Now, there's some things in the lawsuit people don't understand. They say, "Well, you've submitted to the jurisdiction of the court." I did that intentionally because I'm trying to massage the political machine just a little bit. Sometimes you just got to let them do accomplish the goal and let them save face and back out of this thing. That's what my goal is. It's not to sue them for $650 million. My goal is to get them to comply. Now, if they don't comply, we're going to go after the $650 million. $500 million of it, by the way, will go to Billy Faust's family. To compensate them for his death or his murder. These guys are they're in a bad spot here. They're really in a bad spot. They can't win this fight because they've made accusations publicly that we've got records of that are not true, and we can prove they're not true. And they can't prove that they are. So they're real between a rock and a hard place here with this lawsuit. The bottom line is like I said, it's not to hurt anybody. We don't want to hurt anybody, but sometimes you just have to get their attention. And I think that's going to get their attention. And what we're going to do is send these letters to all the counties and say, listen, we won't make peace. We just dismiss you from the lawsuit. If you'll covenant with us or agree with us that you will protect the sovereign rights of the people in your county. That's all we're wanting. We don't want you to do anything for us. We just want you to obey the law. That's all. Is there anything wrong with that? Because we can prove. Now, if I have somebody in the sovereign movement that's violent or crazy, I don't want them in the sovereign movement either. I don't want them out there threatening people or harming people. I want them in jail. That's where they belong. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is do a peaceful, lawful movement to actually instill lawful government, not destroy government. We're not anti-government at all. We're anti-establishment, not anti-government. Yes, ma'am, you had a question.
So what are they going to do for Billy's family? If you're not looking for the money to help them, you're looking...
Well, that's another issue we'll deal with later. Yeah, we will deal with that later. That's not over. So this is just... we use the Billy Faust incident in this, that we don't even have the authority to use him as a plaintiff because his wife got a lawyer. She wouldn't give us the authority without going through her lawyer to make a plaintiff out of Billy. Billy is used as an example in this case. But we chose to give if we do win the lawsuit, we can win the lawsuit if we want to push it. There's no question we can win it. But the bottom line is that I would rather accomplish the goal that we're trying to accomplish here, to gain some notoriety and respect for the sovereign people of America, and put the sheriffs on notice. Just don't bother with us unless we're violating the real law, positive law. If we're violating positive law, throw us in jail. Nobody's going to say anything about it. But if we're not, you need to leave us alone. You can't put us in jail. You can't harass us for color of law violations. It's not lawful. And that's the point we're trying to make here. And if they'll agree to do that, the lawsuit will go away. It'd be nice to have for all of you to have a letter from the President or maybe the Supreme Court saying, don't bother this person with your color of law foolishness. That'd be nice. If you carried that in your car, I bet you wouldn't have too many problems.
Can I get one of those before I leave?
Well, I'll get. I'll find somebody that'll sign it for you. Something all of you need. Has anybody got this Escobedo card on their email they can send to everybody? I got a volunteer that'll do that. Can you do it, Bruce? Okay. This is called an Escobedo card. Escobedo was
I have the one that has the Republic logo on it also.
Okay, all right. Yeah, the one that comes on a business card size. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. Jim made that.
Yes.
That's good. You can just print it on business card stock. This is called an Escobedo card. What you do is you carry this with you everywhere you go. Put it in your pocket. When you get stopped by law enforcement, you pull out your Escobedo card and you just give it to him, show it to him. Let him read it. Yes, sir.
If you will write down my email address, send me a note, and put in the subject line Escobedo card, then I will email you a copy of it. My email is Bruce Oliver, one word, lowercase, @yahoo.com. Easy to remember. Bruce Oliver at yahoo.com.
This is an example of law. Okay, Escobedo was a case where a man was stopped by the police and he didn't even have an ID. He actually had an identification that had a blank, didn't even have a picture on it. The cops arrested him, threw him in jail. He had to bond out. They got nasty with him and everything. And so he took the case on and went, I don't remember if it went to the Supreme Court or not, but it went up to one of the higher courts. And they found that there was no law that required him to have a photo ID. Never was. He had an ID, but it didn't have his picture on it. Well, he chose not to talk to the cops, and so they roughed him up a little bit and threw him in jail. Well, the man won $5 million in a lawsuit against him because they didn't have the authority. The ruling of the judge is that when the arrest started at the time, or the investigation started at the moment of the stop, and he was not required to say one word. There's been several instances of people using this card, and the cops just arrested them, threw them in jail, and kept them for a day or so, and then kicked them out, and they won $5 million. So that's something for point of interest. Yeah, you're going to win a cash award if they do that. You don't have to say a word to an officer. Because anything the Fifth Amendment says, you don't have to testify against yourself. And they say in their Miranda rights, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Okay, so you don't have to speak. You just have to show them. And basically what it says, I'll read it to you. It says, and it's got the case, Jensen versus Quarry, 472 U.S. 478, 1985 is when the case was done. It said, if I am denied the Escobedo rule, you will be occasioned sanctions under 42 U.S.C. section 1983 and 18 U.S.C. sections 241, 242, which is civil plus criminal. All rights reserved. Nemo tenitur prodere sepsum. That's Latin. It means no person can be compelled to incriminate himself. Remember that. And that's all you have to tell them is Nemo tenitur prodere sepsum. That's all you got to say to the officer. He's going to think you lost your mind. Probably going to accuse you of drinking too much or something over the holiday. And probably, yeah. So remember that phrase, and that's all you say. You hold up your card, you say that phrase, and don't say anything else. And most of these guys, these old bubbas around here ain't going to like it. It's a setup move.
Are you saying that there's no lawful way that a police officer can stop you and arrest you?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Under color of law. He has to have probable cause, okay? Like in a traffic stop. This works really good like in these planned stops where they stop everybody. Yeah. That's illegal as heck, man. They can't stop you on the road without probable cause. Now what the cop is going to do, what they traditionally do from what I was told, what they traditionally do is they take their flashlight, and when they give you back they're going to take your card and they're going to call dispatch, and dispatch is going to say, give him back his card, leave him alone, and break his tail light before you leave. So you can say you had probable cause to stop him. No, that's what they do. So that's why I suggest putting a camera on the back there where they can't see it. And so you catch him breaking your tail light, and then it's even worse.
We got him lunch.
But that's something that the judge gave me. He told me about this, and it was kind of cool. So we share that with everybody. He said this is a hoot. He said it's a slam dunk in court.
Actually, you don't have to say anything.
Yeah, he said. Yeah, you don't have to say anything, but if you want to say the Latin phrase, it's fine. That impresses them, I think, or it confuses them. One.
Is that spelled like you're saying?
Actually, I'll pass this around if you promise not to steal it.
If they do it, I'll email you one.
All right.
One thing that people should know is by chance they end up with a broken tail light in a situation like that, they should subpoena the recording of the police radio traffic for that time period so they can also get... Yeah, well, and that can work sometimes, but I can tell you most of that stuff never gets... They have these amazing little glitches when they go to record that stuff and keep it. It's amazing how they do that.
Yeah, I had in Seattle, Washington, we went to, it's amazing how that kind of stuff just happens to occur. I went out there and paid for a seminar, $3,800 bill, hotel bill for the room in our personal rooms, in cash. Well, when they punched in the bill, we used a debit card to hold the room, to reserve everything. And when the clerk typed it in, we had used the debit card instead of giving them cash. They set us up, but we didn't catch it. So we left, and 3 days later we got the bill, and they had billed the $3,800 to the card too, taking it out of our bank account. Well, so we called them up and said, well, it's just a glitch. Went back, had a friend that lives in Seattle go out there and talk to the manager. The manager said, they didn't pay us any cash. And she's the one we gave it to. So we said, well, we can fix that. So we called the bank, and the bank said, well, we'll investigate. They all have video cameras. And you know, it's just all of us, it's very interesting that you could see us on that video. You walk up to the desk, and then all of a sudden it went snowy for just for a minute or two or so. And then all of a sudden it was fine again. It just snowed. It's a video glitch. They turned it off during that time or something, or whatever they did. But they made sure they blacked out that period of time to keep from being sued. Courts do it the same way, and law enforcement officers do it too. They go through those recordings and delete what incriminates them. They do that. I've seen them do it. I've actually had them come and bring me reports to sign that was completely different than the incident, and every time I refused to sign them. Colonel used to love it. He used to say, I want you to sign this. I said, I'll be happy to, sir. I just need you to give me a memo that states that you want me to sign an unlawful report that doesn't reflect the facts in the case. I said, I'll be happy to sign it. I'm not going to do that. I said, no, I'm not going to sign that document either until you send it to me in writing. Because in the state of Florida, you don't have to abide by an unlawful order unless you get it in writing, and then the monkey is on the other person's back. And so he never would give me a written order for some reason. Anyway, we were talking about lawful versus legal, governmental versus judicial. I'm going to go through this quickly. What we have today is the judicial part of the government is trying to make law. They're trying to become legislators. They don't have that authority. They have never had that authority. They probably never will have that authority. The legislature makes the law, and the judges are trying to make law from the bench. The government does have the authority to make law according to the will of the people. But they don't have lawful authority on the bench to make law. And judges just like to do that. Sovereignty and jurisdiction. The sovereign people they're in charge. We are the people that make the law. We are not the people that are the slaves or the servants as they intend. The public servants out there are supposed to be taking care of making sure our rights are protected and making sure that we're not trespassed against. That's their job, but they're not doing that today. When we go into their courts as a sovereign, they have absolutely zero authority over you. They don't have any. Yes, sir.
So you don't even have to say, I claim common law?
I don't. I don't claim none of that. I have fun in court. I like court. I'm going to have some real fun in that federal court.
Well, I would like to say too that I do think that the gist of everything is that we all want to try to not be low-key and not draw attention to ourselves with the intention of stirring up trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to behave yourself, but
right.
But in the case of needing to defend yourself, you need to know your rights.
Yep. Yeah, you do. By the way, I got a call this morning, and I was going to tell you that I was told Jan's case is officially removed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know that till this morning, but I was told it was being removed, but I was told it is officially removed. So that's a good thing. Things are starting to work. Okay. The courts have no jurisdiction over a sovereign man or woman unless they consent to it. And that's how they get you into court and get you to consent by using different tricks. And for the purposes of this, we're not going to really get into a whole lot of that in this course because of sake of time. You can teach a whole class on jurisdiction in the courts. Yes?
Tim, when we have been in court and we haven't given our consent and they just walk right over you, what's our recourse now?
Well, now we can remove it to our courts. We have a court now that is a constitutional court that we can actually remove cases to. That's what I just got confirmed that Jan's case was removed. Yes?
Is that for our information only? Can we share that with our people?
No, you can share it with anybody. It's open to anybody.
Is the information available on a national website? Or?
Actually, we can give it to you, yeah. Yeah, you can go to the NATO Indian Nation. It's their court. It's a sovereign court. Yes. Yes, Mr. G.
Is this both civil and criminal cases can be removed?
Yes. Yes, it doesn't matter. Either one can be removed, yes. Okay. Civil and criminal. And Jan's is the first one we've actually done. It was the first one. We were talking about, when we met with the judge, our intent was to build our own Article 3 courts, and we're doing that, but they already had one. And so we had people needed help now, so we asked him, well, is there a procedure where we could just remove till we get our courts built, till we can remove cases to your court? And he said, yeah, sure. And so that's the first one we've actually done. There's several being in process right now. But I asked him, I said, well, now, I got a friend that's in prison, and y'all know Monty. Some of you know Monty. He's in prison going to prison for 18 years for fraudulent IRS debt. I said, well, how does that work? Can we appeal the case to your court? He said, sure. He said, we'll appeal it to our case, his case to our court, take his appeal. He said, and the case will last about 20 minutes. I said, well, he said, basically what will happen, he said, the first thing that the judge is going to want to see from the IRS is, do you have proof of claim?
Right. That's right. Right.
He said, everything is predicated on proof of claim and they don't have it. And he said, when they don't produce proof of claim, the case is going to be dismissed with prejudice.
You never come back.
To repeat my question, how can I follow up on it?
Okay, I can, to begin a case, start a case, you have to contact Nathan Peachy. He's our Chief Justice and he's the one in charge of the case management. And so Nathan is the one that will get it started for you and he'll give you all the details. You know Nathan, brother.
How much is it going to cost him?
This is what I was told. You'll have to verify this, but I was told that the case would require $5,000. But with the $5,000, that covers your attorney and everything in that trial, that hearing, that court case. Yes, sir.
There's another $500 fee.
Okay, case evaluation fee. I forgot about that. The law team has to evaluate your case, and it costs $500 to do that, for them to see if your case has merit to be removed, because we can't just put every case that comes along without understanding the facts of the case. We don't want to clog the court with frivolous stuff. And so there's a $500 fee, and they'll determine if it can be removed or not, and that's what it costs to do that. So, but if they do remove it, there's a $5,000 fee, as my understanding.
Tim, have they decided yet about how long it's going to take to get this process through?
It took Jan, a week? About a week. And she'll probably, whenever she gets ready, they'll call the case after the holidays, and they'll dismiss it all. If it's like what he said.
The law group.
Oh, the law group is already working.
Yeah, I know that. But, how long is it going to take them to take it, review it, and say yes?
That I don't know. You'll have to talk to Nathan more about that, because I'm not involved in that part of the case or any of the cases. Right now I'm too busy to get involved in all that, case management. But Nathan will give you all the details. He talks to the judge 2 or 3 times a day, and they keep up on the cases, and they'll review the case and decide if it has merit, and then they'll appeal it or remove it to that court, whatever was the proper course of action. And it looks like it's going to be a very viable process. But I will tell you this: don't go into that court with a frivolous case. That judge is not going to tolerate it. You might be in worse shape than you are now.
I'll say this, when I talked to the judge that night, well, tell me a little about the case. And I gave him about 3 sentences. He says, okay, Bruce, said, you told me enough. Obviously, we didn't have due process.
That's right.
And her civil rights have been denied, and her
Right.
constitutional rights have been denied. So, in the interest of not wasting your time or mine, just send me the paperwork.
That's right. And it's not a complicated process. But the cases must be evaluated as a rule because we called in a favor for Jan because of the way she was treated. And but the average, everybody's out there is going to have to go through the proper process. And the reason we did that is we've got to do it that way because if we don't, we'll clog the court up with so much stuff we will be ineffective. We need to keep it open for important cases. And we'll just leave it at that. Anisha?
Yeah, Tim, could you explain the difference between common law rights, or if there is such a term, common law rights versus civil rights?
Well, you got to understand the difference between common law and constitutional law, I guess. Okay, common law was rights under to the subjects of the king. Okay, common law was under the king. Okay, this is the issue I'm having with some of the people in the Republic that don't understand. Common law goes back to Europe. Okay, and it's all was set up under the king and queens of Europe. Okay, so you were treated as subjects in common law. Okay, now when English common law came to America, we changed it up some and it applied to sovereigns in this country. Okay, which is a different kind of law than traditional common law. Common law in America is different. Okay, common law in America traditionally supports the Constitution. But the people are getting the two mixed up and they want to go back under the Articles of Confederation and the Magna Carta and these kind of things thinking that they're getting common law rights. They are, under the king, but not under the American common law system. There's two different systems here. And we'll talk about some of that in a little bit because it has a lot to do with deeds. And we're going to get to that. But in the common law system, you traditionally have more fairness under law, actually positive law. Okay, you actually use maxims of law which are ancient. Many of them have been established by custom over the years and years and years, and have been socially accepted principles. One of them is murder. A lot of the common law principles actually abide by the Ten Commandments or the guidance for a lot of the common law principles. But some of them predate the Ten Commandments. You know, everybody knows that it's not good to murder somebody. I mean, everybody knows it's not good to steal something that doesn't belong to you. It's just basic principles of law that have been immortalized throughout the ages. And it's acceptable anywhere in the world. Some of these things. Now there's some things that get gray areas and are questionable in different societies, but basically every society in the world embraces those same basic principles. Okay, and that would be called common law. It is the law, and that's why they call it common law, because it's common everywhere. And it's the law that's commonly used in every society across the world. And that's why they gave it the name common law. Now, civil rights are a little different. Okay, civil rights didn't even exist until the Constitution actually designated what those civil rights were. And it didn't name them all, it just named some of the basics. It never intended to name them all. It just gave us a list of some that were guaranteed to be protected by the American government constitutional system. The Republican Constitution, or Republic Constitution, protected those in the Bill of Rights. In fact, the Founding Fathers, when they first came together in 1789, or 1787 was the first time, and then again in 1789, they wouldn't approve the Constitution. Because it did not, all it did was, it controlled big government, but it did not protect the rights of the individual. And so, after they finally added the 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights, it became, it actually was passed by and ratified by all the states because they wanted the individual protected. See, that's how important what we're doing here is. Our Founding Fathers took years to draft documents and get documents approved that upheld the individual rights of the people. It's just like you and I don't agree on every social issue. We might disagree on a number of things. I mean, you like different colors and different kind of clothes and different kind of cars and different kind of houses, and we don't agree on our religious philosophies 100%. I mean, we have all kind of various things. But we can all come together in common and work for the same goal without having to kill each other.
Yes.
We get along. There are many of you here probably that don't believe the same. Well, I doubt anybody in here believes the same I do. I'm weird. But anyway, but I still work with you and try to get along with you, and even though we might disagree on some things. And I care very much about people even though they have difference of opinion. I don't really care about that. That's not what I look for. What I look for is a person that stands for what they believe. And you've got the right to believe wrong. But if you believe it and you stand on it, that, to me, that means something.
Yes.
It means that you got character. And I like people with character. I don't like wishy-washy people, double-minded people. Yes, ma'am.
I guess what I'm trying to clear up here is that if, I know we talked about civil rights and common law rights, but then there's civil law and common law, right? But isn't civil law, doesn't that just govern officials that work for
Under the Constitution, yes.
the Republic, for
Right.
example, that would be, the officials would be under civil law.
Yeah, the Constitution itself was written to govern the officials of the government.
Right, so
But the Bill of Rights was put in there to protect the rights of the other people, everybody else. To let them know these are your limits. You can't exceed these limits. The law is not written for us. I hope you understand what I'm saying. The law is only written for lawbreakers. We're not lawbreakers. We live above that standard. That is what, have you ever heard, I used to be a fire inspector, and they used to say you got to have minimum standards, minimum standards, minimum standards. We're so far above the minimum standards it's not even funny. The law has no force and effect on us because we don't violate it. We live far above that. So it has no effect on us. All the law was created for was to govern those that wanted to be lawless, that wanted to abuse their fellow man. See, we don't do those things. So that's what the law was created to do. If everybody did the right thing, we wouldn't need law.
But the civil law governs, is by Constitution, and
Yes.
that binds officials.
Yes, it does.
In our law.
Right.
But the common law is what the sovereign people
Yes.
live by.
Yeah, the American common law,
They're
yes.
not bound by civil law. Only officials are.
Well, in some respects that's true, but not 100%.
I mean, Bill of Rights are acknowledged
Yeah,
for the sovereign people.
right.
But as far as the clauses, enumerated clauses in the Constitution, that's for
Well,
to limit.
I understand your point. Basically what you're saying, if I understand what you're saying, is that most common law principles are criminal actions anyway. They actually are violations against your brother, which would make them criminal. Yeah, you're correct in that assumption, yeah.
I just wanted to get that clear.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Because all the violations in the common law area are pretty much criminal action. That's because it causes harm or damage. And anytime you cause harm or damage, you actually violate positive law, which is sometimes it can be called common law as well. And the law is a very complex thing, and there's so many different variations around the world. But it all comes back to one basic principle. People are supposed to be good to each other. That's the bottom line of all law. And laws were implemented to make sure that happens, and for those that violate that, they're supposed to be punished. That's what law was all about. Civil law sometimes is just guidelines that you're supposed to stay within these parameters, because you have to have parameters for an orderly society. Just like speed limits, there's a lot of the patriots, I don't abide by speed limits. I said, well, maybe you need to think about that statement a little bit. I got one that he actually quit the Republic because he got a speeding ticket. He was going through a school zone doing 70 miles an hour. And he got stopped. And this was during school hours. And he got stopped. And he got mad because the officer stopped him and wanted me to help him take the case to court and beat up on the officer. I said, what you mean? He said, well, I'm a sovereign. I said, no, you're not, son. You don't even know what a sovereign is. I said, a sovereign would have never went through a school zone at 70 miles an hour and put somebody's child in jeopardy. I said, I'm not going to help you. I said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I said, if it had been me, I'd have threw you butt in jail for it. I wouldn't have gave you a ticket. I'd have locked you up. And we have to understand. See, that's why the sovereign people have such a bad connotation attached to them. A lot of that foolishness that goes on. These people think that they're just they're not sovereigns, they're lawless. And it's not the same thing. A sovereign man or woman abides by the law. They respect the law. And they're responsible individuals, exactly. They're people of honor and integrity. They don't go out here and violate. I've had 2 speeding tickets in my life. It's the only 2 tickets I ever had. It was 2 speeding tickets. And I was at fault. I paid them. I could have fought it, yeah, sure. But I was guilty. I absolutely did it. They say, well, it's not positive law. It may not be, but it's good sense.
Thank you.
It's good sense. You have to have rules and regulations for an orderly society. We are not lawless people. Contrary to popular opinion around Alabama, they think we're all a bunch of thugs and just hate the law and don't abide by the law and don't pay taxes. Well, I wish they'd come up there and video me filling my tank every time. I guarantee you I pay a lot of taxes. I have paid property taxes. I'm not going to this year because I'm going to have it removed. But I have paid them all my life. I've paid school taxes. I don't approve of the public school, but somebody pays for it, and I pay my fair share because they did give me 12 years of education, even though they had to open my head and pour it in. Some of it stuck. I didn't think I had any education when I graduated until I went off and found out how dumb people in New York were. I went over there a bunch. I went to college. When I went to college the first time, I said, shoot, I probably can't even pass an entrance exam. I went to some podunk high school out here. They didn't teach me anything. And I went up there and aced all the college exams and had some school teachers up there that came down to go to class, and they were from New York. And these were school, one of them was an English major and an English teacher and didn't even understand punctuation. I understood punctuation. It was hilarious. And I outscored them in English in college because they didn't even understand it. They had a major in it in college. And they were in some other classes with me, in law classes, and they couldn't even write reports. So I did get a little education down there, I guess, after all. Avoiding jurisdictional pitfalls. The best way to avoid pitfalls is don't go to court. Now, does that mean that if you get summoned to court you don't show up? I don't recommend that either. You will go to jail. And they won't give you a get out of jail free card either. You will have to pay to get out. There are many ways to avoid the pitfalls, the jurisdictional pitfalls, but the primary thing is stay out of trouble. Don't create trouble for yourself. Keep a low profile. I tell people, you know, you don't even know I'm around usually. I mind my own business. I slip in and out of places. I talk to people, but I don't go overboard talking to people, and I'm in a strange place. You know, some people claim I'm a snob. One girl told me off because she said I was a snob. I hadn't figured that one out yet, and she's from Tennessee. She wrote me a nasty, scathing email how I ignored her and wouldn't speak to her, and I wouldn't know this girl if she walked up, but she swears up and down that I snubbed her and I was rude to her, and I don't recall being rude to anybody. My mama would have slapped me if I'd have been rude, and she was very adamant about that. You show respect to people, and I try to do that. I don't think have I been rude to any of y'all?
Tennessee girls just crave attention.
I guess that's what it is.
No,
Yeah.
That's the ones that are still in the de facto.
Yeah, well, but she chewed me out pretty bad, and I wrote her a nice apology, and she chewed me out the second time. I said, I honestly don't remember the incident, and if I did offend you, I'm sorry. I apologize. I've never intentionally done that, And then she got me again. Open up the door and there, what you get. I got it. Anyway, stay out of court if you can. Best way to avoid any pitfalls. If you have to go to court, use a little sense. Don't run in and start arguing with the judge. Got a boy in jail a year and 3 months in the Republic right now, or got a year and 1 month. One of our people in the Republic, just a couple of weeks ago, because he went in there and did just exactly what he shouldn't have done. Went and started arguing with the judge. You argue with the judge, I'm going to tell you, they got sharp fangs and claws. And they will bite. And it will hurt. And if you don't watch out, they will get you and they will put you in their environment and they will keep you there for a while. And he's going to be there for a while because he put himself into a position, I'm not sure we can even help him. We are looking at it, but I don't know that we can help him. I think he's into he backed himself into a corner. He can't even appeal it by his agreements. He didn't know what he was doing. We cannot go and argue in their courts.
Right.
You go in there, you make your statements. I don't argue with them. I just make statements. I make notices and demands on them. I don't even argue with them about it. I'm usually nice. Every now and then I get a little sideways with the judge, but they get sideways back sometimes. But I generally don't, I'm very polite in court. I don't go down there to aggravate people as a rule. Well, I have a couple of times, but I had a couple of judges that I like to ruffle their feathers, but they were wicked people, but I knew how far to go too. I've had lots of instances in court. I had one judge, I guess I got time I can tell you a story. I had one judge, he kept telling me in court, this guy was, actually he retired 2 years early, by the way. I put a federal lawsuit against him and he decided he had enough. The federal court decided, the federal magistrates and the federal chief justice decided that he had enough too. And they encouraged him very strongly to retire early. And I agreed to let him retire early and withdraw my suit from the federal district courts. And somehow he decided to do that. But anyway, he was a tyrant, total tyrant. And he kept telling me, he said, I'm God in this court. Now, because I'd mentioned God, and he would correct me and say, I am God in this court. And I used to traditionally say, no, you're not. But one day you're going to meet him and it's not going to be a good day for you. And of course he didn't like me very much. He warned me a few times that I'd go to jail for contempt of court. And I used to keep my toothbrush in my shirt pocket. If you say one more thing, young man, I'm going to throw you in jail for contempt of court. And I'd just reach and grab my toothbrush and... He loved me. He never threw me in jail though. But one day I was feeling my oats one day and wanted to get back on. We had this pretty important case. And so he started that garbage. We got into an argument with him and he started that garbage that he was God. Well, we got through that hearing and we had one scheduled for the next week. And the next week I was loaded for him. I was waiting on him. And what I did, I went down to the Ace Hardware store and I bought one of them little silver paint pails about this big. And I went down there and I filled it full of sand. And when I come through, the courthouse security guys knew me well. I mean, we grew up around each other. And they would come and, when they get everybody in the court, they'd come and sit in the back just to watch the show. And they were just thrilled them. So they would ask me when I come in the court, say, what you going to do to that judge today? I said, you just watch. So I come in carrying my little bucket that day. And that guy said, what in the world? He said, you going to put us on a show today? I said, come on in and watch. You're going to have fun today. So I took my little bucket of dirt and I set it, they called the case. I went up there and set it on the defendant's table. Walked up there with the guy I was helping. And of course the judge, I knew he couldn't resist. He had to ask what that bucket of dirt was. I knew he couldn't. So I just I looked at him and said, it's a bucket of dirt. He said, Mr. Turner, why would you bring a bucket of dirt to court? I said, well, Judge, I said, it's real simple. I said, you have been telling me repeatedly over the last year or so that you are God. I said, I want you to prove it. I said, the Bible says that God took the dust of the ground and made a man. I said, here you go. I said, take it. Make me a man that can live and breathe and talk and walk. And I said, and I'll believe that you are God. I said, or you can create a world. Just a small one to do. He said, that'll be enough of that. But he didn't tell me after that. I went to court with him several months later after that, several times, and he never told me he was God anymore. So I got my point across at least. And I won the case, by the way, too. But I had a lot of fun with these guys, I'm telling you. So, but be careful in court because you can get in trouble. The judge tickled me. He's got his own little thing he does. He brings a bottle of air freshener with him to court. And when the opposing attorney gets a little too close and starts getting a little excited, he sprays him with air freshener and asks the judge to please ask him to stop passing gas in the courtroom. He said that throws them off. It breaks their concentration real bad. There's all kind of tricks in court. But anyway, I have a lot of fun in court too. I have had a lot of fun. There's been some intense times though. There's been some times I thought I was going to go to jail. Now, my buddy Sam Ball, Lord help him, he is a case. He is a case. We had one time he got a divorce and he come to me and asked me if I could help him do a divorce case. And I said, well, you know, I'm not an attorney now. I'll help you, but I can only do what the judge let me do. And so the judge told me, so you can help him, but you can't, because he couldn't see good. He had problems reading, and I also told him he had other problems. But anyway, the judge said, well, all you can do, you can't say a word. Hey, if you can help him without saying a word, go ahead. So I got me a legal pad and I wrote the answers to the questions. And he read them. Well, we was in the middle of this divorce thing. And it was the settlement of the assets part of it. The divorce had already been done. It was the settlement of the assets. And his wife accused him of abuse so she could get a free attorney. And she admitted, she told me that she did that because she was told by some friends if she would accuse him of abuse that they would give her a free attorney to get a divorce. And she couldn't afford one, so that's how she got it. And she admitted that to me. Well, she didn't tell the judge that, but she did to me. Anyway, she accused him of abuse. She got her attorney. And this attorney, honest to God, he looked like he had slept in his car for a week and hadn't shaved or anything. His clothes were all wrinkled. I felt sorry for the guy, I really did. And he walks in there, and he was overweight, and he was just an unkempt looking fellow. And we got over there and got started on making him, he started making his argument. And he looked over there, he got finished, and the other guy was talking, and he looked over there and said, and you got to understand Sam a whisper to Sam is about 90 decibels. He don't know how to whisper. Everything he says is like this. And he looked over at that guy and he said, you're a toad. Right in the middle of this guy making his argument. I said, hush, Sam. But he is. He looks like a toad. He said, he looks just like a toad. Look at him. And he just kept it. I kept saying, shut up, Sam. I was trying to say, hush. You're going to get us thrown in jail. And he just kept on. We won that case too. But I think the judge was amused and entertained that day. But I put a bunch of motions. I used to do this stuff years ago. I'd put a bunch of motions in a stack and put them in just like 40 or 50 motions, just nonsense stuff, just to aggravate the judges back in those days. Learned it don't help, but I didn't know then. So I put a motion for a fair trial in there and buried it in this stack. So this judge had got wise to me, and he got my stack of motions. He said, Mr. Turner, he said, I'm going to read every word of this. And he came back after a while. He went and took a recess and went and read everything of the case. And he come back out and he said, I saw your motion for a fair trial, and I'm going to grant it, but I'm going to deny all the rest of them. Because normally the judge would just deny all your motions, but if he denied my motion for a fair trial, he's done. And I had another case. You got to be creative in court. I had one case that there wasn't no way to win. There wasn't no way to win this case. The boy was not guilty. I'm convinced he was not guilty. He was set up by law enforcement, but they had like 6 law enforcement officers going to testify to this lie. So who was going to win that?
Right.
So he brought me the case, and I looked at it. He didn't have the money for an attorney. And I told him, I'm not an attorney, man. He said, yeah, but I hear you can win, and I need some help. And I knew the boy, grew up around him, and I said, well, I'll do the best I can to help you. And he was looking at like 5 years in prison. And for something that the boy didn't even do. And I believe to this day he didn't do it. So I told him, I said, I read the case, and I said, you can't win this case. So there's no way to win it. I said, they got you sealed up here, buddy. They got you in the box. I said, they're going to get half a dozen law enforcement officers that are going to, one's going to lie and 5 are going to swear to it, that it's true. I said, there's no way out of this. He said, well, you think about it and pray on it and see what you come up with. So I thought about it for a couple of weeks, and I finally called him back and said, you know, I got a possibility here. And he said, well, what's your strategy? I said, there's no way to win the case on the evidence. I said, it's your word against 6 law enforcement officers. And I said, they're going to kill you in court. There's just no way. I said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to subpoena the judge and subpoena the district attorney or the prosecuting attorney as witnesses in the case. He said, you can do that? And I said, I guess. Why can't you? So I subpoenaed the judge and the prosecutor. And they recused themselves because they had to. So they appointed another judge and another prosecutor, set it for trial. I subpoenaed them. This went on for months. Every time they had appointed a new one, I subpoenaed them to court. And they kept saying, well, what do you want to know? I mean, what? I said, I want them to testify. I want to know what kind of law form that they're going to hold us to so I can prepare a case, because we can't prepare a case without knowing what law form we're going to be using. I said, and I want the judge and the prosecutor to tell me. They said, but they can't be a judge and a prosecutor and be witnesses in a case. It's a conflict of interest. I said, really? And so after we did this several times, the clerk called me up one day and said, Tim, are you going to subpoena every prosecutor and every judge? I said, yep. They said, so in other words, you're not ever going to let this go to trial. I said, I'm not going to stop it from going to trial. I'm just going to subpoena the judge and prosecutor. That's up to you to go to trial. They said, well, we can't bring it to trial if you subpoena every prosecutor and every judge. I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. So they dismissed the case. You got to be creative. We win. I mean, you got to use their own laws and rules against them, but you got to know the rules.
So
you got to understand.
Color of law, so you use color of defense.
That's right. Absolutely. You got to understand how to play the game if you're going to go to court. Now, these are just little things that we've done. We've had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, we got an attorney from New York one time was in court, and I did the dumb old country boy routine on him. And that attorney looked over at me and he told the judge, he said, Your Honor, he's dumb like a fox. I didn't fool him. I won that case too, by the way. But when you go into court, if you submit to their jurisdiction, you're probably going to get hammered pretty bad. Now, Brother John in the back there's got a case he's working on that I've been following, and he's kind of shook the court up a little bit with some of the things he's filed. And we got a number of people in here who filed some good stuff. Brother Ron has got some good stuff. We've got some pretty brilliant people in our republic and across this country in our movement that is actually making a lot of difference. They're actually bringing the justices back to reality. It's a slow turn. It's like a big ship, and it takes a long time to get it to turn, but it's beginning to turn. Now, the reason we know it's beginning to turn is because of the case Bond versus U.S., which we'll talk about here in a little bit. In Bond versus U.S., they plainly stated that the people are the sovereigns. And then we've got the North Carolina decision we'll talk about a little bit that says that the judge in North Carolina said, and I got that somewhere, he said basically that all law enforcement in North Carolina needed to transfer all of their property into somebody else's name because the sovereign people were going to take it. And they're right. They've realized what we've been trying to tell them for several years now. You are violating the law under color of law and you don't have any authority. That state court realized that. And they said, we are not going to support the county and the city police and the county sheriffs anymore because you don't have the right to mess with the sovereign people. You are a corporation and you don't have any authority. And that was the North Carolina decision. In Chisholm versus Georgia, it plainly delineates that the people are the sovereigns and the power in this country. We have the right to demand the law. And that's all we're doing. We're demanding the law. We're not volunteering anymore. And it's putting these courts in jeopardy. I read a report here just a few months ago that in the last couple of years, 18 federal courts have closed because of revenue problems. I wonder why. The folks are beginning to understand. Now, what I used to, back years ago when I was first starting out and learning how to do a few things, I kept the county courts tied up all the time with stuff. And, you know, they call it paper terrorism today. Back then we called it clogging the toilet of justice. That's what we called it. That was what we referred to it as. And what we would do is we would just on a $200 or $300 traffic fine or whatever, we would cost the court $10,000 or $15,000, $20,000 to try to collect it. We just keep filing motions and continuances and arguments, and these things will just go on. Well, every time they have court, it costs them money, folks. Right. They have to bring in these people, and they have to pay lots of folks to do lots of work to bring a case. And so we would just keep filing stuff and keeping them going, and we had a regular network going there. And we actually shut the courts in Florida down for a whole day. All across the state, shut them down for a whole day. That got into their revenue stream. And they had a meeting in Tallahassee. All the clerks had to go, and all the justices had to go to that meeting in Tallahassee, Florida. I found out about this after the fact because a friend of mine is a clerk in Florida, and she called me in the next day. She said, will you come down and talk to me? I said, yep. She said, what in the world is your group doing to the courts? I said, well, we're just having a little fun. I said, we're standing up for the law. That's all we're doing. She said, and she looked at me, she said, well, keep it up. It's working. I said, well, why did you say that? She said, well, yesterday they called all of us into a meeting from all those states. She said, did you know that the courthouses, every courthouse in Florida was closed yesterday on a regular business day? I said, really? I said, she said, yeah, and it was about your group. They were trying to figure out what to do with y'all. I said, well, what did they decide? She said, they decided that it's easier to just leave y'all alone. And so they put out a BOLO on all the law enforcement officers. Do not stop these people. Don't bother these people. They're not hurting anybody anyway. It was just little petty stuff. We had law enforcement officers just harassing us. It was just harassment. Well, after that, some of our guys would try to get a ticket and couldn't. They said, I'm going to speed 60 miles an hour through the middle of town just to see if they'll stop me. And they didn't. They wouldn't stop. I drove a log truck and trailer 2.5 years up and down the main highway up in the Panhandle and never got stopped. Didn't even have a tag on it. And we were trying to get stopped and couldn't. They just left us alone. And that's when I realized something. That's all we have to do as a nation, not just as a county or a town. All we have to do is make it where it's not cost effective for them to fool with us anymore. And you don't have to be violent. You don't have to be nasty with these folks. Just let them know we're the sovereign people. And you know, you're operating under a color of law. It has no effect on our lives. We're not going to go out here and bother anybody anyway, so why are you messing with us? Why are you entering into our world? We don't want you in our world. We want to be free and independent. We don't want to bother anybody or harm anybody, but we don't want you bothering and harming us either. Yes?
It's called God's grace and His sense of humor.
Yeah, He has too. He has a sense of humor. But the bottom line is that as a nation, you can do the same thing we did on a local level. Now that the pendulum is swinging back to normal, we're going to go back to a more conservative way in the courts because they're going to have to, or they're going to be closed down, because the penalties, the liens and stuff are so severe that they can't survive with it. They just can't do it. And now that we've got a court being established, guess what else we have? We have a judge that has already agreed to review our liens, and if our liens are good, he's going to sign off on them. Now what is that going to do?
Open the floodgates.
Absolutely. That's going to break some folks' back. Yeah, because Houston, or the Middle District Bankruptcy Court, owes me and Jack $30 billion or plus.
I got one already done in Jared's case on everybody that had anything to do with it, including the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's got the figures like we figured back then.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendous.
Oh, that's enough to make somebody...
I just hadn't put the liens on them yet, because I knew if I put the liens on them, they'd kill him.
Yeah.
And they would have.
Well, you can always do that. So that's the beauty of a maritime lien. It's good for 50 to 100 years, whatever you... Now, you can renew it in 50 if you want to.
Well, I don't answer this.
Okay. I don't mind answering it.
We did the process in Michigan,
Mhm.
tried to do the maritime lease,
Mhm.
they refused to file.
Don't make any
We
difference.
went from court to court to
Don't matter. If you still got them, they're still valid.
county to county.
Yeah, maritime liens don't even have to be filed to be valid.
Wow, we got
Yeah, so that's why I use maritime liens. Most powerful lien on the planet. It goes to first place. First in time, first in
We
line.
filed, and they took them, some documents we took to file, they took our money.
Mhm.
Then they send them all back to us, took a lot of money from us, then send them back and send them back on file. We got all this.
Right. Yeah, I know. I got some friends in California. They paid $500 to file a freedom document, so they kept their money and sent the documents back and never filed them. Won't do it.
Okay.
Can I contribute something?
Sure.
A maritime lien or admiralty lien is also called a secret lien. It doesn't have to be filed. You don't have to give anyone notice of it except the people that you are doing maritime liens with.
We have the Credit River decision. Is a court case that I don't even know how to find it anymore. It's kind of disappeared. A bank professional testified that the foreclosure stuff was illegal, and that they didn't really have proof of claim. Yes, sir.
Is that in Minnesota?
I think it was. Yeah. You can't even find a case in it. You can't get a copy of it anymore. Well, good. Keep it. Yes.
You can find it. I found it right in the Minnesota court system.
Okay. Good. And I don't know all the details of it, but I know that a bank professional put the monkey on their back. Yeah. And that was the case that a lot of people have used in foreclosure cases even still today. But I was told you couldn't find a copy, but I hadn't looked. But if you can get a copy, you can keep it.
I have a lien on my house from a different state because they said that I owe them taxes. Is it possible to put a lien on my own house and get it
Yes.
ahead of their lien?
Yes. Yes, you can do a maritime lien, and your lien will be higher than their lien.
Will I know how to do that before I leave?
Well, I don't teach that in this particular class, but I can show you some stuff, give you some stuff before you leave.
Sounds like it did.
Now wait a minute, you're not my type. Now, this is Alabama, you got to be careful. Okay. Jurisdiction is standing. Standing is a very important thing. We've talked a lot about jurisdiction already today. Jurisdiction is the law. The law speaks. Standing means you have the right to a claim. Simple as that. Now, let me ask you a question. Now, according to law, a bank can't loan money. Yeah, bank can't loan money. But yet, they told you they did, didn't they?
Yes.
And they're expecting you to pay it back.
Yes.
Well, have they ever been able to prove that they loaned you money?
No.
Nope, never proved that ever. So if they didn't loan you money, where did the money come from?
It came from the church.
It came from your signature. It was created when you sign that document because you are a primary or a priority stockholder for the corporation that you don't know about on that account.
Just to prove too that the attorneys and the bankers know that, and the judges know this, in one of my court cases, when I had the banker on the stand, anytime I brought up the fact that he didn't loan any money, the district attorney would object.
Of course.
And the judge would sustain it. And when I brought up the Credit River decision, you should see the DA squirm on that one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they won't even let it on the record.
Right, right. Well, that's not going to keep them from doing it, though. We got some twists and we got some little things yet that we can do.
I recently applied for a refi on a piece of land I own, and just to get the latest mortgage application. And within the first line or so, it actually tells you what's going on. It was worded,
absolutely.
You, lender, as of today, are known as the bank.
That's right.
So they take you as the person creating the money, flip you over as the bank, and then go on with the idea.
Right. That's how they do it. They do a role reversal, exactly how they do it. But it's still not legal. Well, it's not lawful. And it's only legal as long as you consent to it. When you stop the consent, it becomes unlawful. It becomes illegal as well. Okay, appearances in court. Now, let me go back. Standing is very, very important. If you don't have standing, that means you cannot move the court. And what that means is that you can't file an action. You don't have the authority to file it if you don't have standing. So you can't move the court. That means the court can't do anything for you. So it's real important to understand how do these foreclosures and all, how do they come together with standing and move the court, because they don't have any. And so you've got to attack it at that level. Appearances, we never appear generally in court. We appear only by special appearance. That means I'm not appearing under your jurisdiction, I'm bringing mine with me. And my jurisdiction is always admiralty, because I like admiralty, I understand admiralty, and admiralty is powerful. Very powerful law. And they say, well, that's law of the sea. Well, that's true, but they brought it on land in 1961. And it says right in the United States Code, Title 28, that they brought admiralty on land. And so it applies. You ever wonder why we had a yellow fringe flag in the court? What kind of flag is that? It's an admiralty flag. That's because that's the jurisdiction of the courts. Admiralty jurisdiction was given to all of the federal district courts, and that's why I like federal district courts. Now, admiralty law abides closer to common law. In fact, it's very close to common law principles. So admiralty is positive law. Now, what kind of law do we like to operate in?
Positive law.
Absolutely. It is positive law. It is not rules, regulations, statutes, and ordinances. It is positive law. And that law is the superior law, and it trumps all the other law. Positive law is the law because it's God's law, the Creator's law, and it trumps all other law. Warrants, subpoenas, and evidence are different things you'll run into in court. A warrant is usually for an arrest or seizure of something. An arrest warrant is usually often criminal. When you're arrested for a criminal charge, they'll issue a warrant for your arrest based on probable cause and the statements of two witnesses that do affidavits. That's the way the Constitution requires them to do. They don't do that anymore as a rule. Under the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, they are required to do it that way. And if you'll study that very closely, you'll find out that they violate it almost every time. Had a case up in Knoxville, Tennessee. This was hilarious. Guy came up to me and said, do you see anything wrong with this warrant? I said, well, I don't know. I looked at it and said, I bet if I looked at it close, I could find a lot of things wrong with it. And I said, but right now I don't have time. He said, well, you want me to point one of them out to you? I said, yeah. He said, you see that signature right there, that judge? I said, yeah. They said, he's been dead for 20 years. The sheriff's department had been photocopying his name, I guess, all those years and issuing unlawful warrants. What do you think happened to that case? They were glad for that one to go away. Yes, sir.
Is it true that only a trustee of the bankruptcy, United States bankruptcy, can only bring an indictment against you?
I honestly don't know. As far as I know, the attorney generals can, but they may be trustees in their capacity. I don't know. I'm really not familiar with that. That may be. It would make sense because they would have standing, except when you withdraw your consent, then they don't have standing anymore. Subpoenas are just orders for you to appear. One of the things I like to use often is a subpoena ducis tecum, which means come and bring your documents with you. It's a lawful subpoena that requires you to bring, and you can list the exact documents that you want, and they have to bring them to court. Did that in a speeding case one time. A guy got caught for speeding, and he was arguing with the officer. The officer claimed he was going a lot faster than he really was. And I believe the guy was probably telling the truth. A lot of that stuff I didn't listen to, but this particular case was, I knew the officer and I knew the guy, and I believe that the officer probably wasn't telling the truth. And so he said, man, I don't need any points against my license. He said he was a professional driver. He said, I don't need any points against my license because it rates my insurance. He said, the fine I don't care about. $200 or $300 fine I don't care about. He said, but if he puts this speed in there that he claims I was going, he said, which I wasn't, it's going to rate my insurance. They said it cost me a lot of money for insurance, and that's what he didn't want. So I helped him with it. And what I did is I knew a couple of deputies, and I went down there and asked them some questions. And they off duty, and they answered my questions for me, and I found out that the radar machine that they use, they have to update it, send it back to the factory, and have it recalibrated every 12 months, every year, on an anniversary date. But what the police department in that town was doing, they had like 7 or 8 cars with these detectors. They were just alike, these radar detectors that were just alike. And what they did is they sent one back, and then when you wrote a speeding ticket, that's the number that you used no matter which one you were using. And the deputies gave me some inside scoop on that. So also, one of them, I said, would y'all happen to have one of those manuals around for one of those radar detectors that you got? He said, sure. So he went and got me a manual and gave it to me. And so what I did is I read the manual on the radar detector. And every time you make a stop with that thing, or every morning you have to use a tuning fork to adjust the frequency to make sure it's calibrated properly. And those guys didn't even know what a tuning fork was. I said, have you ever done that? He said, man, I don't know I haven't ever seen a tuning fork, much less used it. He said, we don't do that stuff. I said, well, it says right here in the manual that it's required to keep it accurate. I said, so y'all haven't done this? Oh, no, we don't never do that. So what I did, I subpoenaed all of the numbers, the documents that showed the records of all 7 cars where their radar detectors were updated every year. Well, you can and I subpoenaed the chief of police to bring them in this case. And I also subpoenaed him and told him I wanted him to bring the log that they have to keep on all 7 of these machines, because every time they stop somebody, they have to record it. Time, the date, who they stopped, what the speed was, and what the calibration measurement was when they recalibrated it every time they stopped somebody. And plus they were supposed to calibrate it every morning at the beginning of shift. That was the rules in the book. Well, they didn't do none of that. So guess where that case went? So remember, subpoena ducis tecum is a very powerful tool. Evidence. Is there a difference between proof and evidence? Yes. Absolutely. Evidence just indicates something happened. Proof is absolute. No question. When you do court documents, be careful with the word evidence. It can be used against you. I don't use it very often. I usually use proof. I don't use evidence of claim, I say proof of claim, because that means it's got to be absolute. Liens. Liens, levies, and garnishments are something that we face on a regular basis on properties. And all of this, there is a method to the madness here. When we get down a little further, you'll understand why I'm bringing all these things in. Liens, levies, and garnishment can only be brought by what? Lawful due process, and that means a court judgment. Absolutely. It's required. The law says no private property can be taken without due process of law. It's in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. No private property can be taken without due process of law. Due process means they have to go through a court proceeding. You have to be invited to that court proceeding to defend your claim. And then they have to go through that process, and a judge has to order the seizure of your property or place a lien upon your property.
I can't remember which amendment, but isn't it trial by jury then?
You can't, if it's more than $20, your right to a trial by jury is secured, yes. It's guaranteed. If it's $20 or more in value is in question.
So all foreclosures need to have a trial by jury.
A non-judicial foreclosure is a fraud, period. And that's what I'm trying. The people in California, those folks out there, they've inhaled that smog so long that you can't get them to do anything. They've got so much evidence and cases that they could be doing to shut down the franchise tax board and all of these illegal operations going on. Yeah, they're the worst, absolutely the worst. California's like a communist state. They couldn't pay me to live there. I'm telling you, they don't have enough money to pay me to live there. I spent about 6 months out there in L.A. this past year, or earlier this year, and I'm going to tell you something. I was glad when I escaped. God bless them. I got some good friends that live out there. I told them, I said, well, one day I'm going to come out there and it's going to be nothing but waterfront property from Arizona on west. And I said, y'all are going to be washed away. I'd leave that place. Anyway, they like it out there. They don't know any better. I said, if y'all ever come to Alabama, you won't never return. But you got to have lawful due process. And the courts are good at trapping you into agreeing to things. So be careful. Don't make agreements with the courts. You got to be careful. Don't sign anything for a court. Signing anything is going to automatically put you in their traps. So don't sign anything. I don't sign anything for it. Rule of law. This is a maxim of law. How do you know when a judge or an attorney is lying? Right. They're moving expected. We want to talk about some of the mortgage solutions and the 5 steps of perfecting a title. Anybody tell me what time it is?
Right now it's 3:08.
Okay. We'll take a break about 3:30 then.
Okay.
Okay. I don't want to hold you too long. The old drill sergeant said, the mind can only contain what the butt can stand. So.
We started about 1:45 is when we started.
Okay. Okay. 3:30 we'll stop.
These are precious things.
There are 5 steps to land ownership. Now there's a lot of theories going around in the country, and this is why Tom Chapman brought this to us. He knew that we would research it and we'd get down in the nuts and the bolts of the law. And Tom's a good man. If you get a chance to work with Tom or do anything with Tom, he's a good, fine young man. Thank the world, Tom. He's very dedicated, cares about the people, and he's in it for the right reasons. But he had a process that he'd been studying for some time, and he had pieces and parts, but he didn't put it all together. And so he approached me a few months ago. Actually, when I was down there with Brother Gene was the first time I met him. And Donna, you were there. And Roz was there, weren't you? Were you there, Roz? You wasn't at that one? Okay. Donna was. But anyway, That's the first time I met Tom, and I heard his heart. He wanted to help the people, but he had some things he knew he was missing and he wasn't sure what it was. So they were doing the acceptance of deed process, and which is a good process except that it's not complete. And he's been getting information from people all over the country. So what we did is we just sat down and read the law. That's the way I learned stuff, is just read it. Sit down and read the law. It'll tell you the answers in the law if you read the law. And that's what I do. And so we sat down and we spent several days up in Atlanta. We spent 3 days just studying the law in this process that he was doing. And we discovered a few things. Now, we understand acknowledging the deed and accepting the deed were very important, but when we got to reading the law, we found some additional things that we weren't addressing. And what we found is that the lawyers knew them. And I'll tell you how they're doing the deeds. Okay? There's several steps to property ownership, 5 particular steps to property ownership. That's acknowledgement, taking delivery, acceptance, taking possession, and occupation. Now the first 3 are bold right there in the law, right in your face in the law. But the last 2, taking possession and occupation, I didn't get that right away. And one morning when we were up there in Atlanta studying this, the third morning I was there, I sat up in bed and God spoke to me literally, and I'm not crazy, I don't have coffee with God every morning. But He put these 2 words in my head, possession and occupation. And I said, well, what in the world does that mean? I didn't understand what it meant as far as terms of land. But when I got to reading and studying the land laws, it's in there. And it's very, very important. So God was trying to help us here. And He did. He showed us some great, wonderful things. Acknowledgement takes place when the notary notarizes the signature of the grantor on a deed. Whoever sells the property or conveys the property. You can sell the property, but you cannot sell land. You understand the difference between the 2, right? You sell the real estate, which is the stuff on the land, but you cannot sell the land. Land can't be sold because you don't own it. Who owns the land? God. The Creator owns the land. He created the land. People have understood this for thousands of years. When God in Genesis, was it 1:26? He said He gave us dominion over the earth. He didn't say He gave us ownership of the earth. He said He gave us dominion over the earth. Now, I think He's probably the highest authority there is. I wouldn't want to argue with Him. So He gave us dominion, but that does not mean He gave us ownership of the earth. He gave us the right to use it. He gave us dominion over the fish of the sea. We don't own the fish, but we can go out there and catch them. And we can use them for food. We can use the things that grow on the earth at resources, but you're not supposed to abuse them. You're supposed to use them responsibly, because that's our responsibility, is to take care of the earth. But He only gave us dominion. So God did not give us land, He gave us dominion over the land. Now, in the Scripture, it talks a lot about taking possession of land. And when ancient Israel went into the Promised Land, what did they do? They took possession. Absolutely. Okay. Now, and that's what we're talking about. We say the word ownership. The only ownership you have of that property is during your lifetime. Then it goes to somebody else, right? Ultimately, it's owned by the Creator. We don't really own anything. But when we're talking about ownership, it means you have the right and title to that land to use it how you see fit during your lifetime. And that's as good an ownership as we can have, because we are subservient to the sovereign power and we only have dominion. He has ownership. He created it, He owns it, but He let us use it. And He gave us the right to use it. But when the deed is acknowledged, that's when the grantor signs the deed and the notary stamps that he signed it. She witnessed the signature. That's acknowledgement of the deed. But this little step right here is what everybody was missing. It's called taking delivery. And this is the slick little trick that the lawyers do at closings when they go down to the closing office. They take their little file and they sit down at the table and they get you to sign these things and they say, well, here's the deed, I'll record it and get it back to you, get you a copy of it. What you should do is say, can I see that please? And write right on the top of it in big letters, accepted, sign it and date it.
Say what now?
Accepted, right on top of it.
Okay.
Sign it and date it. And if you did, he would swallow his false teeth. Because he knows at that point you know the game. Well, what they do is they show it to you, but they never give it to you, and you did not take delivery. Taking delivery of that deed is a very important legal step, and they know that. So what they do is they have taken that file out of the courthouse, they brought it to they changed the names on the deed, they show it to you, and they take it right back down, and what they do? Record it right back in the courthouse, don't they? Huh. Well, why didn't they give you the deed?
They just stole it from you.
That's exactly what they did. They just took your land and put it right back in the same place it was before you paid for it.
Under their control.
Right back under the county's ownership on behalf of the Queen.
So that we can have...
I don't know how it is in other states, but one thing we found in Wisconsin, every single warranty deed form, there's different variations, but every single one is created and drafted by the Wisconsin Bar Association.
Yeah, of course.
Every single one. Is that the way it's in every state?
Yeah, probably. I'm sure it is, but you can make your own.
Right on the form, it says Wisconsin Bar Association Form 1.
They ought to read my deed in fee that I created. I bet they'd like that one. I'll give you all a copy of it. You'll like that one. That is the trick that they use. Now all of a sudden there's no owner of the land. The land is being held in trust by the county.
Waiting for someone to take...
Waiting for the owner to show up. The property taxes are being collected till the owner shows up. And they're supposed to be held until the owner shows up. But they got this little thing called a 1099-A for the IRS that after 3 years they file because you have abandoned the funds.
So is he there that I knew you.
Yeah, now you know how they're really doing it, don't you? And so the county gets to keep it after 3 years. Isn't that kind of a pretty good little game? Okay, so now you're starting to see the picture. Okay, now that's how they control your land. Now, when you go to a foreclosure, you go down there and say, well, I'm the owner of this land, I got the deed. No, you're not. You never delivered. They never delivered the deed to you. You never took delivery of it. You never acknowledged the deed, accepted the deed rather. You didn't take delivery of it and accept it. You abandoned the property. They're just feeding off of our ignorance, folks. We're not ignorant anymore.
Thanks to you.
We've discovered some powerful stuff here. Once you go, and see, this is what Tom was on to. This is what he brought to me. And I got studying, I said, man, this is cool. All you got to do is go get a certified copy from the county and write accepted and hand it back to them. Sign it and date it. When you do, they start finding reasons they can't take it. Because they know what you just did. They understand what you're doing. But they know that we don't. Okay. Now, so what they're doing now is we've come up with these fancy acknowledgement forms and acceptance forms and all this kind of stuff. And they see them and they're told by their supervisors, you better not file one of those forms because they know it breaks the chain of custody that they have on that property. Now, what happens is when you go to the foreclosure court and you go in there, you're speaking as a tenant on the land and you don't have ownership rights. Because you abandoned your property. They can prove it. So you're sitting there talking and the judge can't hear you. Why?
You have no standing.
You bingo, you hit the nail on the head. You do not have standing in court to speak. Because you don't own the land. You've got to understand that you have got to take delivery of that deed, and you've got to accept that deed, and then you have to take possession of the land and occupy the land. Now that doesn't mean you're there all the time. You can go put, like Bill told me, he said, my property has been occupied for 10 years. He said, I got a cow on it. I said, that's exactly right. That's true. It's his cow.
Can you have a tenant on it? A renter?
Yes, you can. He's got a point there, a legal point. He's got a cow on his land. He is occupying his land, even though he's not there. That cow is occupying his land, and it's his cow.
He puts an old junk car in his yard.
If you've got a piece of property, you're occupying land. So this is what people have got to understand. Now, if you go back and read in the Scripture, Jeremiah is one of the instances how they did land. They would go out and they would check the land, what they called the ancient landmarks. They would take possession. That was called taking possession. They would go walk the land and check to see that the corner markers were still on the land. Because, unfortunately, the Israelites were bad about moving them. They still are today, aren't they? That hasn't changed much. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I have 4 parcels of land.
Yes.
Wrote the acceptance documents.
Mm-hmm.
3 signatures, have them notarized. Took the notary down to clerk of court. That's presented everything with a certified copy of the deeds to the recorder of deeds. It would not accept it.
Yeah, I know.
Would not record it.
I know. We got that figured out too, though. We know they won't accept your documents to try to take possession because then they lose control. Okay, so what the judge is doing, you don't have standing. You're sitting there as a tenant claiming to be an owner. He don't believe you. You have no credibility or standing in his court. The judge is not violating the law one bit, folks. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Yes, sir.
The bank don't have standing either.
You will get to that too. But that's a very good point. You have neither client has standing in this case. So the judge is sitting here. So what happens? Somebody, the trustee, who is the trustee? It's whoever you gave it to, is the trustee, appoints the judge to handle this case, to step in your stead, because the owner didn't show up.
So now the trustee has a standing, and he appoints the person.
He appoints the judge to decide the case.
And he knows you're going to come in there with no standing.
And you don't have standing. And the judge, I know y'all say these judges are evil and wicked, but and what they're doing is not right. But what they're doing is exactly what they're supposed to do.
And it's proper the way they set it up.
And an evil system.
It's an evil system, that's true. But they are not breaking any laws. They're absolutely going exactly by the book what they're supposed to do. You just have to understand what they're doing and understand why they're doing it, and then you can do something about it.
That's right.
So what we decided, well, this is a pretty simple fix. If the deed is already acknowledged by the notary, and we take delivery of the deed and we prove that, and we accept the deed by our signature, and we take possession and occupy the land, then we have fulfilled the whole law. But there's another twist to this. A deed is not ownership. Just because you have a deed does not mean you own the land. A deed goes back to ancient English or European common law. A deed was issued for what is known as a fiefdom. A fiefdom is like a mini kingdom that was given to a baron or a landholder, a duke and an earl, whatever their title they wanted to give them. They held royal titles and held lands. That's what a deed was issued for, what they called a fiefdom. That's where the word deed came from. Now when you had a deed, you could hold that land as long as you met the terms and conditions of the sovereign, the ruler. But if you quit holding up to the conditions that he agreed to, or that you agreed to, and you violated those conditions, the sovereign could come down and kick you off your land and take it.
Couldn't the sovereign change the rules?
They did all the time. A lot of the times the kings in England were real bad about changing the rules. That's the reason we ended up with the Magna Carta because they took the guy and put him to the sword and said, you're either going to sign and agree with it or we're going to take your head off. I don't think that was a valid contract. But it worked.
Isn't that just like the IRS thing, that you can opt out but will arrest you?
Yep, it's exactly the same. The law has not changed in thousands of years. It works the same way. We're still under the Robin Hood system that we used to be.
So
Hasn't changed a bit.
When they do that, we can shoot them?
Oh boy. That's another class. No, do not shoot anybody. We use the law. We use the law. What happens, folks, is there all of a sudden is a transformation in the courtroom when you understand and you start applying the rules. Judges follow the rules. They know that you don't know the rules. You're learning the rules right now. And what I'm telling you works. I'm telling you it absolutely will work. It's been done several times and it works. You've got to understand. Yes, Brother Ron? Please.
Thing on that property situation, one of the most important things of all is check to find out if the judge has a vacant office. Because I found my properties, it was a vacant office.
A vacant office, the judge was?
Yep, under Colorado law, it was Title 12, 8, 9, and 10, and he never recorded it, therefore his office would be vacant by the Constitution.
Yeah, and that's quite often you'll find that. That's probably a good thing to check.
I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Tim, but what I'm finding in Wisconsin, the circuit court level, in the oath of office, it used to say that they're the judge. They take the oath as the judge. Now it says in that line, they fill in that blank line, and it says Circuit Court Branch 1. It doesn't even say judge. That they're saying that they're the court.
Right. Well, that's a play on words. They're not the court.
I know, but they just started changing that probably in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Where they removed judge, and now they're putting Circuit Court Branch 1 or whatever branch the judge is.
I don't know.
It just doesn't make sense, because you're taking the oath as a judge, and now they're saying, it doesn't even mention judge, it says court, branch, whatever.
Right. Yeah, they got a lot of tricks. They play word games with us all the time. They change the meaning of the words to keep us confused. They do that all the time. And it works. Works a lot. The problem that you have all boils down to one word that we said was standing. So we've got to learn how to get standing to deal with these foreclosure issues. Well, how do we do that? By owning the land, absolutely. By doing the lawful steps that are required to own the land. It's very simple. Very simple. There's 5 things I just read to you. Acknowledgement, taking delivery, acceptance, taking possession, and occupation. Okay. Now, that's with the first 3 involve your deed. The taking possession goes a little further than that. To take possession, you have to bring your land patent forward. Because only a land patent is true ownership. A land patent is the only true ownership of a piece of property. We need to go into some terms probably here. Get my glasses on so I can see out past my nose. It's 3:30. Time to take a break then. All right, well, why don't we do that then? Let's take us a little break, get up and stretch, get you some coffee, wake up, whatever.